All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. I will apologize right off the bat. It's hate week, so we're going to be going at it hard. We're back to our old video style for the time being, so if there's any technical glitches, I apologize. Haven't finished setting up our improvements, so hopefully over the Thanksgiving break we'll be able to get those in. But let's get in the high tempo, Matt. What do you got for us this week?
Actually, it's weeks ago, and the Sixers trading for Jimmy Butler. Haven't talked too much basketball, but giving up Robert Covington and Dario Saric, or however the hell you say his name, and 2022 second-round pick. So they picked up an all-star, which is good because I watched a game the other day and watched how awkward Markelle Fultz looked shooting a basketball. It made me think, how in the hell is he even employed right now? He's like shooting like from the side. It looked like his shoulder. He's seeing a specialist, I guess, now for his shoulder, but it looked awful. It's like, how the hell are you even playing basketball in the NBA right now?
Oh, I'll say with that, I think he is injured. Didn't he hurt his shoulder or something? I think that came out today or yesterday. So I was going to bring that up too. Yeah, you're right. We haven't talked a lot of basketball. A lot of the teams that we talked about, Celtics haven't looked good. And it gets back to the team aspect. You bring these guys in. You bring in Jimmy Butler. The Celtics get back Gordon Hayward. How is that gonna mesh with the team chemistry? Look at what, and I hate bringing him up, LeBron is dealing with in the West. It takes time to get together with a bunch of those guys to get to a place where you can win. There were rumors that Kevin Durant's looking to come out east. I don't know now with the Butler deal if Sixers are a location or if he's looking solely at Boston to try to get away from LeBron. But at that point, you have to be able to bring a guy in, and he has to fit with that team identity. I think when the Celtics made it work back in, when was that, 2008, they had three guys that were veterans, and they all bought in. And they all wanted to win a title. So they had that common goal. And here, Jimmy Butler, great move. Is it going to work? He needs to bring that veteran toughness. And I think the leadership kind of called him out anyway. Where was he? Minnesota? I think it's where they called him out whenever he was leaving, saying there was no way a deal was getting done. Basically kind of insinuating that it's all about the money. So, good call. Mine, actually, my man Les Miles getting hired at Kansas, which, I'll be honest, he came at this maybe a little bit too early, and the reason is USC is going to be open. That's what the rumors are. USC's opening. I don't see how they can keep Helton. I think we talked about it on the show. Of all the people that were on the hot seat, his name wasn't mentioned. He is 100% being looked at as gone. They had Sarkisian, had that issue with being drunk at events, so they had to fire him. But before that, you had Lane Kiffin, and you forced him out for a similar thing. I don't even think beating Notre Dame saved his job. And I'll go on record saying that. I don't think they beat Notre Dame. Their marquee right now is they're the only loss on Washington State's record. But you can't go down a slide, not with the talent that they have. Very easy for them to get talent. I don't know if it's the top tier talent you need to compete at championships. But they always have certain athletes that they can get from LA, and I think you can end up with a speedy team like Oregon. But I don't know if they have the type of recruiting base that gets you the defensive line. And let's be honest, have they ever had a defensive line like Clemson and Michigan have this year? I don't think that's ever been their MO. And on the East Coast, you can get guys like that drawing from Texas and Florida. And I don't think out West you can do that. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Well, I think Les Miles made the right move going to Kansas, and this is why. Because with the Big 12, with the style of coaching that he's bringing or has historically brought, he runs a ball control offense, and he plays tough defense. And if he can replicate what he did at LSU at Kansas, he's going to fit in the Big 12 the way I think you're seeing Pitt right now match up in the ACC, where Pitt's playing smash mouth downhill football in a pro style system versus a lot of these teams who've now converted to the spread. If he can do that same thing at Kansas, number one, it's going to put him into a different class of people that are fighting for recruits. And number two, there's no pressure for him to be pushed out the door. If he were to take a USC type job, which at this point he's not, but if he were to take that kind of job, the pressure from USC is to win now. That's why they went through Kiffin, they're going through Helton, whoever this next coach is, it's going to be win now is the expectation. Just like you don't go in, like when Harbaugh was hired at Michigan, the expectation wasn't, we'll build it 10, 15 years down the road and see what happens. It was win now. You burn through Rich Rod, you burn through Hoke, and you're burning through them. The expectation is to win. They're going to give you what you want in terms of facilities and different things. You better produce on the field. And I think at Kansas, you're going to get more of a leeway because, let's face it, Kansas is a trash football program. They've had nothing in recent memory. They had that short run when Mangino took over from when he was OC at Oklahoma. But, I mean, that's a blip on the radar.
Well, let's be honest. I had bragged about Ed Warner, Michigan offensive line coach. He was rumored to be a finalist for that Kansas job. So I told you, I texted you after the show. I was like, why did I even have to mention his name? Getting his name out there on the books. So kind of a relief. He was the offensive coordinator at Kansas when Mangino was there. I know I always get those two confused, Mangini and Mangino. But that was their last great year, 2008. I think with Les and looking at where they are right now, he doesn't have the advantage that team had being in the Big 12 North, where they really only had to beat Nebraska. So now you have to go round robin. You have to beat Oklahoma, Texas, and let's say West Virginia. West Virginia, that third team could kind of flip between TCU and some other teams. Maybe Texas Tech. Well, they got rid of Mike Leach, so they kind of shot themselves in the foot. Oklahoma State. So there's always going to be three teams you're going to have to beat, at least two of them, and then you're going to have to beat them again in that championship game round robin. I think, and I'll play devil's advocate, do you think he's going to end up like Lovie Smith at Illinois?
I don't know that he's going to do that because Lovie didn't come from the college game, so I don't know that he's going to have that negative stance where Les has played he's coached the college game at a high level for a long time. That I think the formula is there. It's just a matter of getting his guys in and being given the amount of time to make that happen. And I think that with time he'll be able to pull his guys in and do those things.
And I'll throw out some other just some notes and the big rumors around. So I think the guy's name is Jeff Long. He's a Michigan man, the athletic director. The rumor was that he was the athletic director. Well, he was. It's not a rumor. But he had interviewed Les at Arkansas when he was the athletic director whenever they hired. I think did they hire Bielema or Chad Morris? One of those two hires. And apparently Les came in and kind of tanked the interview is what the rumor was from LSU side of things, where he came in and had a big plan where he was going to hire Lincoln Riley away as the offensive coordinator. And he named a ton of like top assistants that he was going to get to win at Arkansas. And so the LSU perspective was that they would never get out of that buyout. And they would be paying him till 2023. And he'd keep going to his one interview a year. And he would just tank it. So it was very interesting that LSU bought him out right before this was announced. Or whenever the flight tracker was going. And so possibly Kansas, the same athletic director, Jeff Long, did move up to Kansas. The rumor this time was that Long had called Miles up and said, give me a list of coaches that you would want to go after. And he said, well, what about me? And he kind of had to talk him into that interview after how he bombed the last one. So it went through this time. Kansas right now is the only college across the country that has a national championship winning basketball coach and football coach. So can they win? I could see them being like an Iowa State where they're 7-4, but I just don't think you're going to be able to get that top talent. you don't play the teams in your area. You don't play the Nebraskas. You don't play the Iowa. You don't play the Missouri, like the top football schools in your area. You're stuck in a division with the second-rate Iowa State, Kansas State, and you don't play Nebraska anymore. So it's going to be very tough even for your region to recruit whenever you're not playing those top schools. So that's the other thing. You're really zeroing in on that Texas base. But we'll get back into college football here. Let's get into Steel City update. Pirates made just a trade with the Indians. I don't know if we talked about it last show. It was kind of just swapping some assets. Nothing really big. There were some rumors floating around that they might make a move for some guys, but I don't think anything went through yet. So it's pretty much just a wait and see. And we're back to the same thing. Are they going to spend to try to get some guys that might be a bump up? I don't think. They ended up with, what did they got? They got a trade for the 73rd pick in the 2019 draft, which again isn't going to be a help coming down, but we'll get back in on them over the next couple weeks as they start to move. It's still early in the thing. We'll go negative, I guess. I was going to ask if you wanted to go positive or negative, but we might as well get it over. Penguins right now are in last place. And I wanted to see if it was just our assessment and get a feel on the fan base. So, of course, I went to Twitter. I went to Reddit. Went looking through the hashtags during the games, and it's the same things over and over. I would say the top two complaints are Jack Johnson, who we've talked about on the show, and Matt Murray, which kind of surprised me and kind of hurts because, was it 2 years ago, we were talking about how they had to get rid of Fleury and take that youth movement, and it's looking like it's I'm looking at the standings right now. It's looking like it's not working. They have 18 points. They're tied with the Devils for last in the Metropolitan, and that's dead last in the whole entire Eastern Conference. So you're not even close to a wild card when you were just on top of the division. And how hockey works is that a couple teams scouted, saw that they had some holes. Now teams have been attacking it on defense, and the Penguins won 7-2 their last 10 games, if I didn't mention that, on a current 4-game losing streak. So you have any thoughts on that, Matt?
The frustrating thing with their game, I think it was last night, they were winning, 3-0 going into the final period and ended up giving it away. I mean, it was something insane like that I think, you don't play defense. You're not getting it done on the defensive end. And we've been pounding on that drum for a while, but I don't even blame, I've said in years past, when they keep the goal clear, they play much better. They have the offensive firepower to win games. What hurts them is their defense. So you sign Jack Johnson and trade for Jack Johnson, and he was supposed to come in and be that defensive player to help clean up some of those issues. And you know what? You're not going to shoot 1,000, but where I felt like when they were really pushing in those cup winning years, they were coming up aces with the trades that they were pulling. And they really just haven't gotten the bang for their buck out of the guys that they've brought in. So I don't know if it's as much a coaching issue, if it's a managerial issue of scouting and acquiring the talent that they need to do, but there's some form of change that needs to happen, or you're going to be seeing coaches and GMs pushed out the door.
I'll say this. One of the big things I look at is the goal differential. Penguins right now are -2 overall. They're scoring goals on offense. They're not as bad. Like looking across the league, the Senators are -13. They have better points and a better record than the Penguins right now. And they're giving up goals, but because they can hold on defense and keep their leads. If you're in shootouts, and the thing that frustrated me, and I don't remember if we got this in time, but they traded Hagelin, their number one penalty killer. And then right after that, they get rid of him. Then they lose a game on penalty kills. It's just frustrating. Like, what are you trying to do? Like you said, you come up aces on a couple deals. You have a guy that has great camaraderie. We just talked about it with basketball. You got to have that team aspect. You trade him in basically a 1-for-1, what is the purpose of that this early in the season? Was he causing issues? No. Was he helping the penalty kill? Yes, 100%. He's the best guy for it on the team, and you get rid of him, and now you have an extra hole you created, and I don't understand what the reason was. Were they trying to clear cap space? It's way too early for things like that. You're going for a championship or you're not. Can't be breaking in too many young guys. So you're right.
Well,
Go ahead.
I almost get the impression with that it was a move to kind of break up the complacency. Like, since their last cup, they really haven't made a lot of moves. They haven't, because honestly, they haven't had to. I mean, they did give some pieces away to Vegas, but I mean, all in all, they didn't sign anyone big, they didn't trade anyone big. It just kind of like was status quo. And I think maybe from the managerial side, maybe you look at it like, well, let's trade someone like Hagelin. Even though he is a locker room guy, he is a guy we like. Just getting rid of that space, maybe that snaps people back and realize, hey, they got rid of him. I could be next.
And I don't like that fear game. If you remember, what spurred the Penguins winning a couple of those cups? They got a new coach in when? Was it January or February that season? I think that is where you make the changes. If things aren't happening and you have Hall of Fame guys on your roster, you got to make that move. And that's what is frustrating, I believe. Because if you have vets and you have especially young guys, you get a bunch of young guys and now they're kind of afraid to make mistakes. This isn't a heavy veteran team anymore. You can't do things like that. I think you got to make the moves in coaching. So, I mean, we'll get back into this. I know it's still early, and I want to get into football, but not a good start. And I always talk about it. January, got to turn things around by January and get ready. So maybe that will happen. I guess it's not really a positive. My next topic: Steelers struggle with the Jaguars, and for all, well, what do we say? We won the game. You came back. If you're watching that last drive, you knew they were going to win. You just had the feeling that this is kind of like the Bengals game where, okay, the Jaguars took it to you all game, but this isn't the Jaguars from last year. The same things, though, that the Jaguars were able to do, keep sort of like the ball control offense, low scoring, defense heavy game, that seems to be able to play counter to what the Steelers want to do. I don't know if they're going to face a team like that in the playoffs, fortunately, but it gave me a little bit of worry going forward, Matt. What did you think of that game?
Quick question. What about the Jacksonville Jaguars offense scares you?
It's nothing. It's the same.
Exactly.
It's the same thing, though, that Michigan does in college. You wear the team down, and you just dink and dunk, kick a few field goals, and in the second half, you're hoping that you can just impose your will and come out on top. But go ahead.
That's exactly at the end of last year. What was Jacksonville's issue? It wasn't their defense. It was their piece of crap offense. Like, they couldn't move the ball. So what do you do in the offseason? You upgrade absolutely nothing. And, sadly, the thing that came back to bite Jacksonville was people trying to make a big deal out of Jalen Ramsey talking trash. Guess what? He had 2 picks, and if we're being honest, he held Antonio Brown to 39 yards. Because on the touchdown pass that he got, the 78 yards on,
yeah, it
was blown coverage. He was in zone coverage, and the safety over the top never got to his zone. So if you're giving him that credit, like Brown ended up with 5 catches, 117 yards and a score, but all day Ramsey had 2 picks and held him to 39 yards. He did his job. He can as far as I'm concerned, he can trash talk all he wants. And in Jacksonville was floating the rumors of trading him. Give your picks, Pittsburgh. You have secondary issues. I guarantee Jalen Ramsey is playing defense for Ben Roethlisberger. Pencil him in. Pencil him in, because then what's Pittsburgh's biggest issue? They can't cover anyone in the playoffs. They just go backyard football and let everyone play. Well, you match him up against whoever they play in the playoffs, best receiver. That neutralizes that threat and helps them. And I think that would make them better.
I think that's a great point. We don't have Bell's contract. I was thinking, how do we make the contract work? You just lost a dead weight there, so you have the opening. What were they? What did they pen for him? $15 million, something like that was the offer that they had. So they have room. Make it. We'll get on Twitter. We'll send that out there. I looked at the time of possession. It was actually worse than I thought. Jacksonville had the ball for 37 minutes.
But here's the funny thing with all of this. You know what made Pittsburgh play hard was the fact that they said Jacksonville was talking trash to them and taunting them. So basically it was like a high school team. They didn't give a crap until Jacksonville started trash talking, and then they're like, "You're not going to take my pride." And then they decided to battle back. That's the stuff that's frustrating, because you would think that they would be motivated to play, especially the way that they played the week prior versus Carolina. There's no reason they could have continued to play that way, but the inconsistencies of playing down to their competition is what hurts Pittsburgh come playoff time. The same thing with Jacksonville is the same way they play versus Cincinnati. It's like they'll let them hang around, and then at the 11th hour go, "Oh yeah, we are a better team," and then Ben just sprays it down the field and puts the scores in. Yeah,
it was close. Jacksonville was up 16-0 with 2 minutes and 9 seconds left in the third. Steelers scored on the 78-yard touchdown that you mentioned within the next minute. And then the Steelers scored the rest of their points with 2.5 minutes left in the fourth. So it looked like I thought they would at least go to overtime and win there, but they were able to get it done. So I don't know. The ball control offenses really hurt, but if you go back and look at the standings, are they going to play a team like that? The one team that I thought plays like that, the Washington Redskins, and they're in first in the National League or NFC East. Man, I feel really bad for Alex Smith. Had the old Joe Theismann injury. And now, I don't know. It's just brutal. Praying for that guy. Hopefully he gets better. You hate to see that. You never know if you're going to be the same. And that's in the NFC, ball control. Maybe the Rams, you could say that, but they're kind of high-powered. Then you have what? Patriots, they're not. Houston Texans, maybe, but not really. Chiefs are too high-powered. The Chargers, that's a spread offense. So the Steelers really don't have, the AFC's working out to be exactly what they need to play to be successful in the playoffs. So luckily you struggle during the season, but it doesn't matter because ultimately the Jaguars are 3-7. You hit them last year, your worst possible matchup. Get it over with, get the win. Let's move on. Anything else you had from that game or anything across the NFL?
Let me think. I was actually just surprised with that Monday night shootout, to be honest with you. I watched the first half of that Rams-Chiefs game, which, early on I think we talked about could be a potential matchup for the Super Bowl. That was the kind of game that I was expecting to see from more teams this year. And it's the stuff integrating the stuff that you're picking up in the college and high school level that everyone in the NFL says, well, you can't do that stuff. Well, they're doing it. Not only are they doing it, but they're doing it on a very high level. It's putting them in a completely different league compared to everyone else because of the stuff that they're able to do. And I really liked watching it. I don't know if you had a chance to see it.
Yeah, that was one game that we were watching, and we had a discussion off the record about the Saints. They're playing that same style, and I would peg those three teams right now, Chiefs, Rams, and Saints. If I was a betting man, I would bet that one, if not two of those teams are going to be your teams in the Super Bowl. I know the Rams just played the Saints. Was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? And that game ended up being, 45-35. Saints win. Then they played the Chiefs. Rams played the Chiefs and beat them 54-51. So you're going to see, normally if a team scores 50 in the Super Bowl, it's like John Elway getting destroyed by Joe Montana 50-10 or something like that. It's not both teams scoring 50 points. So if you're looking at this and you like high-scoring offenses, yes, you have to like what you see. I mean, all across the board. We talked about them. The one thing, the Rams could be ball control with Gurley, but in that instance, they really didn't need to do that. You're able to be more flexible because you're bringing in, like you said, the concepts from college. You're able to bring them in, have a quarterback that can make those reads, and be successful. You have to be able to adapt. Have to. So,
well, one of the things that I really like that the Rams do is you don't see a lot of personnel changes. They kind of just go, one back, one tight end at a lot of times, and just kind of the way that they adjust to formations and motions makes teams have to adjust the way that they're doing things. So it's kind of cool to watch the chess match of how they're setting up certain plays, and it's leading to some wide open scores.
Oh yeah, it's awesome to watch, and they both have young quarterbacks. Outside the Saints, who have Drew Brees still hanging around, it's like Drew Brees and Tom Brady are deciding to play. It's like watching 2000 Big Ten football. Those two guys going crazy. They last well into their 40s, and then you'll have Goff and Mahomes out there slinging it, young versus old. Those could be your AFC, NFC championship matchups. Both sides, old versus youth, young, whatever you want to say for that comparison. So I like it. I've always liked offenses like that. And you bring some of that Mike Leach style. Let's get the ball to our best playmakers and let them make a play. The Chiefs, if you were looking at the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill, how many people overlooked him because of his size? But yet look at what a playmaker he is. He's like a college version of Desmond Howard, but playing at that level in the NFL. It's outrageous. Returning punts, kicks, whatever they need him to do, breaking screens to the house. I mean, he's doing like a Heisman performance in the NFL, and I just don't know what teams are going to be able to do. Andy Reid, for all the shit we give him, he's putting together a competitive team. And maybe this is the year where you bring in some assistants, you start to get some of that newer concepts, have some youth. Because he could have stuck with Alex Smith. Not saying that would have been a bad decision. That was more his style, the conservative style. So,
yeah.
Speaking of that, our buddies down south there, the Baltimore Ravens, what do you think is going to happen with them? So they start Lamar Jackson. They win, of course. And Flacco's supposed to be back. Would you play him, Coach?
No.
Do you think Harbaugh will play him?
If he truly is healthy, I think he will. But I don't think that... I think it doesn't hurt to give him another week's rest and to see is Lamar Jack handed over, because Flacco's not getting any younger. And if Jackson is the real deal, then you want to give him those opportunities. And if he struggles, you can still bail him out and put Flacco back in, and it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt that development. I know they have a lot of money invested in Joe Flacco, so that may drive some of the moves too. That for what they're paying him, they may just say, if you can go, get your butt out there and earn your money. But for me, I think the running threat really gives them an edge.
I'll say this. Let's go back to, I don't even know what year it was anymore, where a young Jim Harbaugh has Alex Smith, starting quarterback. He gets hurt. He brings in Colin Kaepernick. And Alex Smith never sees the field again. And those 49ers trade Alex Smith for some key pieces that are then squandered as the ownership pushes Harbaugh away for some weird reason, and the 49ers return back into the sea of despair where they only win 2 or 3 games a year. But you had a coach that made that decision. Coincidentally, his brother, John Harbaugh, now has that same decision. He should make the same call. I think you let Flacco go. I know you have a big contract. The Bills have been looking for a quarterback. They did Nate Peterson for a while. Who else? Redskins are looking for a quarterback now. Alex Smith's gone. They had a whole call. They're interviewing Mark Sanchez, Colt McCoy, I think. I don't even know who was on that list. It seemed like I was reading a 2009 preseason. What's the trophy for quarterback? So O'Brien Award, Maxwell. It was like I'm reading a preseason list for the 2009 quarterback award in college. That's everyone they called in. They were like, guys, we lost our quarterback. Get out here, Sanchez. Come on, guys, get out of the booth.
Well, with Sanchez, a lot of those guys were offensive people when he was playing for the Jets. So playbook and scheme and things like that, he's probably up to speed with it. That makes sense. The thing that you also have to take into consideration in this is that Harbaugh has no future. He's already done at the end of the year. So why not just play Lamar Jackson and then you can just put out there what pieces you have, and whoever the next coach is can be the one to figure out what they want to do with that train wreck.
Oh, I'll put on my business hat and say that I looked at the attendance numbers, and it appeared that there was an excitement, and attendance was down for the Ravens with the Flacco, but Lamar Jackson brought it back up. So it could be one where the owner just says, hey, we're playing the future. But I honestly think right now with Flacco is when you try to work. Is the trade deadline over? Was it this week?
I think. It's coming up, if not.
If not, they need to be on the phone with the Bills. Who else? The Redskins. Teams like that. That's exactly what I would be doing right now. Go ahead. Let's see if we can move him, even if it's just for
No.
If Harbaugh's gone, what's it matter? It looks like Flacco lost the locker room.
He might have lost the locker room, but here's the deal. Look at what the Houston Texans did. They went plug and play with Deshaun Watson. He scrambled. He ran around last year. And how did he do in the playoffs last year? Do you remember? Because he was like me and you, and he was watching it because his ass got hurt. With Lamar Jackson running around, he hasn't had the time to put on the NFL muscle. And if he's going to scramble the way he is, those NFL defenses are going to drill him. And it could put him at risk of injury that you would want to have a veteran, experienced signal caller like a Joe Flacco to come in and operate the offense in the event that he would get injured.
Are you trying to tell me that Bobby Petrino didn't have a class weight program at Louisville?
If he did, he wasn't on it because you saw how he broke down after his motorcycle accident.
Something that would prevent his team from going, like, what are they, 2-12 this year?
Yeah, obviously it wasn't that good because it got his ass fired.
All right. It's weird that I'm just complaining about the Ravens. I think they should just go with Jackson, get rid of Flacco at this point, and try to build for the future. And if it doesn't work out, it works out for us, Matt. It helps the Steelers down the road because then we're playing whatever. They don't need a quarterback. They won with the Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. Ravens get back to Ravens football.
They don't have Ray Lewis. They don't have Ray Lewis anymore there to clean everything up.
To spray everyone with the deer antler spray. Get their workouts, hit their max peak. Let's see what else. My boy Mitch Trubisky has the Bears in first, and he could be injured. I'm patiently waiting to find out if my fantasy football season's over or not. They're on a compressed week, so it really hurts. I think they're playing the Lions, which, speaking of the Lions get a win. They might even be playing the Lions this week. I don't know. Lions. Guess how they won that game, Matt? Did you watch that game?
No, because who watches the Lions?
They played the Panthers, and I have 2 TVs. I have dual TVs. I highly recommend it. So you can watch 2 games at once. So I'm watching that. Panthers decide to go for 2. In the NFL, why the hell would you go for 2? And this wasn't like, we're going to go for 2 with 5 minutes left because I trust my defense to get it back for a field goal. No, it was like 2 seconds left or something. They go for 2. Awful play call. Panthers lose. Panthers right now are 6-4. If they play for overtime against the Lions, they're not playing the Chiefs here, Matt, and going for 2. You only supposed to go for 2 whenever you're desperate and you don't think you can beat the team in overtime. They were not, now they're what? 3 games? I don't think this tells me. They're 3 games behind the Saints right now. They could have been only 2. In a better spot for the wild card. Luckily, the NFC is kind of a mess this year. So are they still the number 1 wild card? I think they are.
Well, that hurt the that hurt the Falcons laying an egg versus Dallas. How the hell do you only score 19 points against Dallas?
And the Falcons, they had an offense that looked like it was going to be the world's best.
It looked like it was coming apart, and then it was just like, all right, we're good, and went back to laying an egg.
I don't even know. I'm looking at the NFC because I like to give some things. That was my takeaway from the NFC. Panthers, what the hell are you doing? You could have been in the driver's seat, almost locking up that playoff spot early, and you go for 2 against the Lions. Lions are now 4-6, and the Lions are right back in the race for the wild card. They're only a game behind the wild card now.
But, I give a tip of the cap to the Saints because they went out, even though he got hurt, they went out and tried to sign Dez to try to add some additional weapons. They made an attempt, to try to get their team better. And even though he's not playing, I think the team's playing better as a result of showing that they have an interest in performing better. Pittsburgh Pirates, take note. Maybe if you try to, show that you're interested, maybe you get more out of the players currently on your roster.
Yeah, and they also said that did they end up getting Brandon Marshall too? Is that it?
Yes.
Is that who they settled for? So they had a contingency plan because they leaked it. They said we were really highly torn between Brandon Marshall and Dez Bryant, and as soon as Dez gets injured, guess who they call up? And they're like, look, we had you guys 1A, 1B, and the front office or whoever, they just give someone as a scapegoat probably. Brandon Marshall, you ready to go? We're excited to have you. And he doesn't come in with any animosity now. He's like, damn, they wanted me. They wanted me in the beginning. Coaches.
Yeah.
So coaches gave 2 names, and I was one of them, and now I'm there after an injury. So it's a win-win, and I'll go back, and we'll wrap it up with Jalen Ramsey. Steelers right now are in a rare position because of the Le'Veon Bell. You have contract room. Make that move. If the Jaguars are honestly trying to get rid of their star cornerback, you made a move with Hayden before. Great. Maybe he hasn't been the star player that you need, but that is where you need the help. If they're really worried about just cutting costs, get rid of some of your draft picks. Because you have to make a decision. You either have to think right now, is Ben Roethlisberger going to be able to win us a Super Bowl? I think yes. What is going to get that done before he leaves? You got to make moves like this. You got to make moves because you can't risk it on, okay, we still have a young core, whatever. Maybe we don't make the move now, but in a couple years we'll be an 8-win team. We won't have as big of a drop-off. I say go for it. Who cares about that 8-win season? I'd rather win a Super Bowl and then go 3 and whatever, 15, whatever it would be. So what are your thoughts wrapping that up?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think, if you're a player or 2 away, make the move. You have pieces in every other aspect of the team that you can make do. I think it doesn't hurt to explore that. And I also think that was also a way, potentially leaking that from the Jags could be their way of trying to publicly say, hey, you guys need to tone it down. And maybe just having that slip, because Ramsey's been the lightning rod for that Jacksonville team, and he's been calling quarterbacks out, and he's been saying all this different stuff, and it's hurting because the offense isn't scoring points, and they're not holding up their side of it. So when they addressed him and they were looking for a fiery quote, he just put on one of those cold weather masks and just like went out and like didn't speak on what was being, on any of the rumors. Because then Jacksonville backpedaled on it real quick and released a statement saying, no, we're not interested in shopping him at all. There's no truth to those rumors, but why would that be leaking if there wasn't at least something there?
Yeah, it makes me think everything's calculated. You hear the rumors against college. There's rumors again that Brian Kelly is looking at the NFL. Maybe the Giants. I mean, he seems to be very Tom Coughlin-esque to me. Maybe that's where he's able to jump in. I don't know if they're looking for a coach, but same with this. If it's leaking out that there's issues, there are 100% issues because that owner owns the local press basically. So I mean, go for it. I'm not even worried about the locker room because, like you said, Steelers weren't excited to play Jaguars. So why not bring a guy that's confident and calling quarterbacks out and getting the team fired up? I think that's what they're missing right now. Yeah, you can show off and do all this cool stuff, but if you go into a game and you really don't care, it's awesome if you get fired up and beat down the Panthers every couple games. Cool. But then you come out flat against Jacksonville and go through the motions and squeak one out. I mean, that's what hurts Steelers, playing down to the competition. So that's it for the NFL. We're going to get back into that. We have a big Thanksgiving weekend coming up, but got a big one. Pitt gets it done. Pitt Panthers win the Coastal. They take it to Virginia Tech. And that was a beatdown. I watched and I thought, maybe they'll win this one. They just kept running and running the ball. It's looking like their offensive line has started to finally mesh. And to be honest, they've been getting better every season under Narduzzi. As the season gets on, they're one of the rare teams that have been improving in the ACC. So I put together a rooting guide for both Pitt and Penn State. I'll start with the ACC. Right now, it doesn't even matter. Pitt's not going to make the playoffs. So it doesn't, they don't, who do they play this week? Miami?
Miami.
It's rivalry week. Maybe Miami is their rival. Who knows? They can go ahead. They could lay an egg there. And to be honest, I wouldn't even care if I was a Pitt fan. And I'll tell you why. Because they should be spending the next 2 weeks coming up with wrinkles for Clemson. They beat Clemson. They get the auto bid from the ACC and the Orange Bowl. I think that's their tie-in. So who cares about Miami? You're going all the way down to Miami. I would contact, like I said, I think I said this last time, they should try to just stay. They had a 2-game road trip to win 1 game. They got it done early. Or no, who did they play? Wake Forest? Did they play Virginia Tech?
They played...
Now I'm getting confused. Am I talking about the wrong week?
Well, they had the Virginia game in the rain, and then it was Virginia Tech, I believe, and then Wake Forest.
Well, let's look, because I don't want to sound like an idiot to all the Pitt fans. I'm getting too fired up. They beat Virginia Tech down last week, and it carried over. Wake was the clinching game, because I knew that they had to go on the road. They played Virginia Tech at home. It carried over. Let's go through the stats here. Pitt had 470 yards. They had the time of possession almost at 40 minutes. They're doing the same thing I mentioned earlier in the show about Jacksonville and Michigan try to do. You dominate the ground game, and then you just keep pushing. You keep pushing, and then in the second half, the fourth quarter, you're able to they ended the game with 2 touchdowns to pull that game away. They were up 20-13 at the beginning of the fourth after a Wake field goal, and then they scored the last 2 touchdowns. But
the thing that's always helped Pitt, and when Pitt's winning football games, and it's about as cliche as it gets, they run the football. When Pitt can establish a ground game, they're a very tough team to play because their play action plays right into their run game. And so then when you're worried about having to come up on the run and then worried about throwing behind you, it leaves a lot of defenses in tough spots where they can't overly commit in one way or the other, and so you just gash them. That's what's helping Pitt jump up ahead of these teams. When if that's they're gonna be their key for the next 2 games. If they can continue to run the ball the way they are, then they will be just fine versus Miami, and even I think they could even potentially compete with Clemson. Clemson, it would have to be a perfect storm because Clemson's built to throttle Pitt. Not saying that it's a lock, but it's plausible for them to be competitive in that game.
Clemson's built with the D-line first.
Absolutely.
Very similar to Michigan, and that's the kind of team that can take Pitt and push their offensive line. And I think that's where you see the contrasting styles. Those two teams, very, very built around their defensive line. And as much as Clemson scores, they're still defense heavy. Where Oklahoma, Washington State, they're built around the offense. Alabama's more balanced. I think they're still built around their cornerbacks. Similar to
that's funny
LSU.
that you say that, because I think I sent this to you. They released the awards for the assistant coaches, and I was surprised that Washington State's defensive coordinator was one of the ones that was up for the award.
We talked about him on the show. You remember who that was? That's Tracy Claeys, isn't it?
I think.
The big guy from Minnesota. He was their head coach for a while. He filled in for Jerry Kill when he had a seizure. And I think they said, yeah, great. We're not going to hire you. I don't know if he was interim or if they hired him for 1 year or how that situation worked out. Jerry Kill had Minnesota about eight wins. If you remember, they took Penn State to the wire. It took a long Saquon Barkley run the year that they won. I think that was right after the Michigan loss, the year they won the Big Ten. It was early. It was like October or September. That Minnesota team, Jerry Kill had to retire. I think Tracy Claeys took over. Did well. In Minnesota, they did what everyone else is doing, hired that young coach. And I think that call back to Les Miles, I think that's what hurts him. He's 65. How are you going to get young kids to come hang out with like your funny grandpa? Basically, that's what other schools are going to use against them. And Mike Leach said, I watched an interview with him. I don't know when we talked about him. I know I brought up because I had watched an interview with Mike Leach where he said, I looked and I thought this guy was great. I don't remember what the reason was they got rid of him. It might have been a player abuse thing, to be honest. But they pushed him out, and Mike said he gave him a call. He answered, and he was glad to get some defensive help. And I think he promoted him to defensive coordinator. So very, very cool. Because that's all you need. And that's all you need in the Big 12 too. Look at how TCU was able to hang. They just haven't recruited at that level of the Big 12 yet. So once they lost their juniors and seniors when they first came into the league, they've been having trouble. You got to kind of reload along those lines. So, looking at Pitt though, I'm not even worried about Miami. Like I said, they could lay an egg in that game, play as vanilla as they need to, and to be honest, I think they could still win. They could play a vanilla game. And the one thing that sticks out to me, Clemson struggled with Syracuse. Syracuse is like, I know they ranked higher. They're a worse version of Pitt. Pitt beat them head to head. There's no reason Syracuse should be ahead of Pitt. Syracuse, this is going to get me fired up because I was looking at the ACC. Someone had put out a picture where they were like comparing conferences top to bottom. And they had Pitt like in the middle tier. And I was thinking, Pitt just won. They had Syracuse in second as the second best ACC team. And I thought, why? Who did they beat? Who did Syracuse beat? I have their schedule up right here. They beat one ranked team, NC State. That's it. They just played a shit schedule. I mean, that's you get a couple extra wins. You only play an 8-game conference schedule. You play Western Michigan, some school named WAG, UConn, and Notre Dame, I guess, counts as your other non-conference, which was a loss. So you schedule 3 puff games, you get an extra win. They're 8-3, Pitt's 7-4, because Pitt had played Penn State and Notre Dame. So because Pitt had scheduled one more Power 5 team, they're perceived as the worst team, even though they beat Syracuse head-to-head. It's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. So that's my last piece. Good. Anything else you want to hit on in the ACC?
Oh, absolutely. Knowles taking on them Jorts wearers this week down in Gainesville.
That's part of my Big Ten rooting guide too. Go ahead.
I'm actually excited because the Knowles pulled the win off last week against Boston College in dramatic fashion. I think that was kind of a signature win for Willie Taggart because he had to win against Boston College at home to set the stage for this week, because now there's a lot riding. And when you're looking at beating Florida, not only puts another win against the Gay Turds, but it also makes them bowl eligible, extends the consecutive bowl streak, extends the consecutive seasons without a losing record. There's a lot of things that they're playing for right now that they need to just win, because I think when you look talent for talent, Florida State has more talent than Florida, and they need to just flat out show up and just handle their business.
Yeah, I had that on my games to watch, and we're going to get into Big Ten in here in a second, and the reason was Penn State could really use Florida to lose. Right now, they're one of those teams that's hanging around that if they win, they're going to be considered for that at-large bowl bid for the New York Six. I think Penn State could still jump them, but if they lose, that's one less team to worry about. I think they're the only team that has 3 losses right now that's ahead of Penn State in the latest college football playoff ranking. I think Florida is 11 and Penn State's 12. So cheer for the Noles. If you want some disruption, that is what you want. You want ACC's pretty much set. Clemson, doesn't even matter what happens. They could lose, and I still think they're going to get into the playoffs unless there's some chaos. So just go.
I don't know. I think Clemson has to win. I think the only conference that could potentially lose a game and still find their way in is the SEC, because they have it slated with Georgia knocking on the doorstep and Alabama being there, and they have them positioned so that
that's another big game that's under the radar. Georgia Tech in the ACC. Georgia Tech's kind of hitting a groove. They're 7-4. So you're playing Georgia. Don't forget that Georgia being ranked so high is complete bullshit. They got shelled by LSU. Shelled. They lost by 20. 20. If I was in the committee room, that's all you have to say. You can't compare them head to head, even if they beat Alabama. And if you stack up the rankings with Michigan, let's say Michigan wins out, all you have to say is Michigan's loss was to an undefeated Notre Dame on the road first week by 4. Or was it 7? What did they end up? I don't even remember. They had a chance to at least tie or win at the end of the game. I know that. Georgia got destroyed. So I know a lot of talking heads are putting it out, but don't forget that when they have the total resume, they're supposed to do the blind look, and that's what supposedly got TCU and Baylor both jumped out of that first one. And that 20-point loss is going to be hard to erase, especially if the Noles take care of business. Or no, wait, they lost to LSU. Who does LSU even play?
They're just winning. They just play everyone and beat everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Georgia right now, they're getting hyped up because they want to give Alabama that signature win. Alabama could lose to Gus Malzahn. He has their number. For whatever reason, he plays not to lose. He's like the Mark D'Antonio of that rivalry. The weird punt returns for touchdowns to win the game. That was the Michigan State one, but they had that kick six where they tried the field goal. You returned it for a touchdown to win the game. I mean, weird things happen in that game. Georgia plays Georgia Tech at noon on, of course, the SEC network. The weirdest thing. So, I mean, you have a 20-point loss to LSU. I don't think you can overlook that unless they blow out Alabama. And I don't think that happens. Plus, if Georgia Tech plays them close, then what do you have? I just don't know. We're getting into a scenario where they're just going to have to expand the playoffs. So let's go over. I'll go over the Big Ten rooting guide for Penn State, and then we'll just talk general college football to wrap up the show. Penn State, right now, 3 losses. I told you earlier they're rated 12th right now. So if you're looking at the college football rankings that came out tonight, Penn State's 12th. That puts them squarely in the running for a New York Six Bowl. What they want to happen is they want Michigan to win out and make the playoffs. Michigan making the playoffs eliminates Northwestern. They definitely, no matter who wins the game this Saturday, Penn State fans, you do not want Northwestern winning the Big Ten championship because that puts Northwestern into the automatic bid in the Rose Bowl, and Penn State most likely would be pushed down to the Citrus Bowl or the Outback Bowl. I don't know which one is first, because the at-large would then take Ohio State and Michigan. They don't make the playoffs in that scenario. So Penn State, you could root for Ohio State to win out, but I don't know if they get into the playoffs. They're ranked 10th right now. They're behind UCF. So your best bet if you're a Penn State fan is you want Michigan to win out and make the playoffs, which I think they do if they win out.
But I tell you what, I like the fact that they bumped UCF up, but if Ohio State were to knock off Michigan, they would just leapfrog right over top of them.
Yeah, but they would have to leapfrog 6 spots. They would have to jump Washington State. They also have to jump LSU. LSU 7th. Does that blowout loss to Purdue hurt them? It hurt them last year. They came out and said it. That was the reason they didn't jump Alabama. It was because of the way they lost to Iowa. It wasn't the fact that they had 2 losses because the conference championship, that negated it. Alabama didn't have one. Ohio State did. That put them on even ground. They looked at that blowout loss to Iowa, and that's what kept them out. They have another loss of that caliber. I think they're out, and I think that's a nightmare scenario for Penn State because Fiesta Bowl and whatever the other one is, Peach Bowl, Cotton Bowl, they're going to pick Michigan and Ohio State as their at-large, and Penn State gets pushed back. I think, I mean, that's what you don't want. You don't want one of those teams. You don't want both of those teams hanging around because they both get picked ahead of Penn State. They have the head-to-head against them. Your other bet, I don't think they would pick 3 Big Ten teams, to be honest, this year. The middle and the back end are too weak. Too weak. Michigan State has fallen off. Wisconsin has fallen off. And Nebraska didn't even break even. I think if Nebraska was 6-6, that would have boosted up some of their records. But right now, Penn State, they need to be the 3rd team picked. 1 team in the playoffs. Ohio State would then take the Rose Bowl bid. And Penn State's right there for the Fiesta Bowl, is my prediction, if Michigan makes the playoffs. To make that happen, you cheer for Alabama to win out. Because then you don't get that second SEC team in. There's no drama. Clemson and Notre Dame, you could cheer for them to win out too, because that might push back some of these other teams getting automatic bids. Because if you don't want Pitt beating Clemson if you're Penn State, because then Clemson's going to get that automatic bid. They might not be in the playoffs. So you want to keep the status quo right now. Florida, cheer for them to lose. We talked about that. You want Washington State to win out and most likely Oklahoma to win out. Oklahoma then pushes West Virginia and Texas back. Oklahoma goes to the Sugar Bowl, and Penn State's right there in the Fiesta Bowl. So that's your rooting guide if you're a Penn State fan. Got to beat Maryland, though. Very losable game against Rutgers. Very losable. So I don't even know. And the rumors coming out, I wasn't going to talk about it on the show. I've heard that it was fake news by multiple people, but James Franklin is rumored to fill in out at USC. I don't know why he would leave unless he's afraid that he's not going to be able to beat the Big Ten East teams. But the rumors are that Urban Meyer's out too. If that's true, it's really Penn State and Michigan that's going to be head-to-head for recruiting. I think right now, Michigan has a top 10 class. I think Penn State's right there. I think them and Ohio State are right around 12 and 13. I think they're really close together. If Urban Meyer goes, Franklin's going to take some of those recruits, and they're going to have another top 10 class. That will give them 2 top 10 classes back to back. You got to believe that he stays. And it's those two battling it out. He took it to Michigan last year. So all he has to do is stay the course. I don't know if Ohio State's going to be able to reload with a coach of that caliber. I mean, Urban Meyer's the second best coach in college football behind Nick Saban. Why would you run to USC? You don't have any ties recruiting out there. You're not a great end-game coach, to be honest. Your strength is recruiting. USC recruits itself. So you're going to have to bring in assistants anyway. Why not just bring in the assistants to an established program that you already have recruiting ties and are successful? I think their class was, 5 last year? A top 5 class? Keep it going. Stay there. That's what I'm saying. I don't think I have anything else for the Big Ten. You got anything else you want to add for them?
I'm actually looking something up real quick because I just want to see what the difference is from his salary to what they were paying at USC. Because I could see if USC is going to pay money that Penn State's not willing to pay, that I could see him potentially leaving to go to USC if they're willing to pony up the money. But I just don't know.
Well, let's see. Franklin right now is making he's the 15th highest paid coach at $4.8 million. But I want to say that USC is not on here because they're private.
Okay.
South California. That's my guess. And he's definitely not coming up.
But I think that may be the thing that swings it. Is it because money talks? If he's getting comparable and then you don't have to compete now, I think the thing for him is you're leaving Michigan and Ohio State, but then you jump into the Pac-12 and now you're having to deal with Leach at Washington State, Chip Kelly at UCLA, and just the circus of Oregon. So,
and he has Herm Edwards at Arizona State.
I tend to forget Arizona State because I was brainwashed to hate Arizona State after Fraud Graham left.
I found this is coming from a hard-hitting report by the OC Register. They said that according to the USC's tax returns, they paid their head coach $2.6 million. So he makes $2 million less than James Franklin. I would say that Penn State pays more. And if they don't, they need a booster. They just had a booster paid for a whole new hockey arena, basically gifted them a top 10 hockey team, which I'm still mad about. Michigan played Penn State over the weekend, and they split one game apiece. Michigan won Friday. Penn State ended up winning on Saturday in overtime, I believe. Game was on Big Ten Plus. You're telling me that Wisconsin playing basketball the one night against like Bethune or something is better than a top 10 hockey matchup? Then why the hell would you push so hard to get Penn State a hockey program and bring in Notre Dame if you're not going to show the games? The second game, what did I tell you was on Saturday? Campus eats. Campus eats. But yet you wanted me to watch the game. I would have to pay extra. Give me a break. You had a top, I don't know if Michigan's ranked top 10, but I think Penn State was ranked 5th. Michigan's ranked in hockey. You're having two.
Quit being such a cheapskate. Spend $1. Pay to support your team.
You already pay for the Big Ten Network. That's the whole point of it. If they want to get me to just pay, I would gladly just pay the $10 a month for Netflix and let me watch whatever game I want. But don't force me to watch Campus Eats. When I turn on the game, I say, ooh, there's a Big Ten, a big ranked hockey matchup in the Big Ten. That has to be on the Big Ten Network. I'll pop that on while I watch the football. Nope, Campus Eats. Great. That really helps out all your alumni because I guarantee all the alumni groups are just dying to get back to eat at the cafeteria, the college cafeteria. Can't wait till I go back for homecoming game. I'm going to eat at the cafeteria. No one says that. Give me a break. Show me something that, so mad. But They have the Big Ten Network money. They can pay for Franklin. They can pay for his assistants, which the funny thing I saw was a bunch of Penn State fans are putting together a petition to try to get boosters to hire Moorhead back from Mississippi State, which would be the weirdest switcheroo. You take your OC, he goes to Mississippi State for a year and you bring him back, and Franklin goes to South California. I don't know.
Ask Gus Malzahn how that works out. Offensive coordinator on the national championship team, leaves, goes out to Arizona State, re-signed as head coach. Big money.
Well, that's what everyone's saying about I switched the topic to the college football playoffs now, but Malzahn reminds me of Gene Chizik, Iowa State school coach. They're like, we'll get him. He's awesome. He's doing okay at Iowa State. It's really hard to win there. He wins a national championship, then they get rid of him. So the rumors are that Ohio State, they wanted to push for Ryan Day to be the head coach, named head coach in waiting, back whenever Urban came back from suspension. Apparently someone, I don't know who, but they shot that down. So Urban, and I did have a mailbag question. I actually didn't even put it up here. I forgot all about it. Do you think Urban Meyer is faking it on the sideline, Matt? Did you see his antics? I sent you one of the videos.
No, he really does look like he's in a lot of pain. Did you watch that Ohio State game? You'd be in a lot of pain too if you're losing to Maryland.
To be honest, they should have lost to Maryland, and Michigan should have clinched the Big Ten East because that 2-point conversion, like I said, you on the 2-point conversion.
Wide open. It was a great play. It was a great call. Everything was great about it except the quarterback's throw. Threw off his back foot and threw it into second row.
He didn't even have to. He could have just stopped and threw it. There was wide open. He didn't even have to roll out. I think he just panicked because he didn't expect it. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you remember after the Florida one, he came out and said he had health issues. He didn't say anything about the cyst that he has in his head that he's been pretty candid about this year. And whenever he announced that Florida one, everyone said, what health issues? You've been perfectly fine. Do you mean the 20 arrests that the team has? Is this what you're running away from? And I think he got a lot of shit. And I think that's why he sat with the media. And my theory is he did that on purpose to get them to spin positive stories about him. And this time, I think that he's like, look, you guys didn't believe that I was sick last time? I'm going to go ahead and act sick on the sideline. And he's doing an Oscar performance. He's adjusting his pants. Looked like he was grabbing his crotch for a good 15 minutes straight there. I don't know what issues he had down there. He buckled over, just like sitting there while the team's... They called like a timeout, and he just like hunched over on the sideline.
Again, if that's your team, then that's the best that they can do versus Maryland. I'd be doubled over in pain too. That's how I watched Florida State this year. It's painful. It physically causes me to be in pain watching them play, knowing what it could be and what it should be.
And I'll say this, because this is what I'm going to end on for me, and then I'll get your final bell. Michigan plays Ohio State, and I think Ohio State's going to win. And I thought long and hard about it. They always win. And Michigan plays so poorly on the road. It's at the Horseshoe. Every time there's a highly ranked matchup, it's at the Shoe. 2006, at the Shoe. 2016, refs slapping Ohio State players on the butts, not calling pass interference, hanging out with them, asking for autographs after the game, at the Shoe. This year, 2018, top 10 matchup, at the Shoe. So I think Ohio State wins, and I think I wouldn't even be surprised if they lost the Big Ten championship game. The only chance I think Michigan has is, for whatever reason, Jim Delaney, the Big Ten commissioner, loves to have refs pull for the team he thinks deserves to make the playoffs. If you remember back in 2014 when Penn State played Ohio State, there was a clear interception that Ohio State got granted that hit off the ground. I was at the game. Penn State should have won, and I'm sorry, Penn State fans, because I know there's some listening to this. You hate that I bring it up. He wanted Ohio State in the playoffs that year. They win the national championship. 2016, he knows that if Ohio State wins, they're going to be in the playoffs, even though Penn State is league champs. They get in. His team of choice, throttled by Clemson. 5 touchdown loss. And it goes back. There's records. I found one. It was like from the 1990s where Michigan played Illinois. And the head of officiating said that Jim Delaney called him and told him to keep an eye on a couple of Illinois players. And I'll say this. Why would he tell them to do that? Unless he wanted flags thrown on the Illinois guys to help Michigan win. He always goes for the most talented team, Matt. 30 years of it.
But across the board, though, the more talented team is going to get the better treatment from the officials. And I see this down at the high school level. If you go into the game as the favorite, you're more likely to get a call in your favor as opposed to being the underdog. You know, looking at last year with our playoff run, we were going up against a team that was expected to be a state playing team, and we were not going to get the benefit of any call, and we didn't. So yeah. I do think that does play a factor into that too. That the refs already have, maybe it's not coming directly from there in the scheme of like the conference saying, no, we're going to make this team be the winner. But I think it may even just be a subliminal thing in the back of the minds of the officials that, hey, this is supposed to be a team who's playing for a conference championship and national championship, and I'm not going to be the martyr as the reason why they didn't win the game. You know, it's not going to be because my call. So maybe you compensate as an official a little bit more to try to cover up for the fact that, you know, and I'll use Michigan as the example. Michigan's not going to be left out because of some stupid call late in the game. They're not. If they flat out lay an egg.
Matt, have you been around for the past 20 years or 15 years, whatever it's been? We're going to have that call.
Well, yeah, but you've also lost to like Indiana or someone that you shouldn't have earlier in the year too. You're in a position right now where the table's set for you to make the play. All you got to do is win.
Very true.
No pressure. No pressure.
I think back to the rumors that Wisconsin threw that 2014 Big Ten championship game where they got killed by like 60-0, and how that set their program forward. That they're getting hammered every year now. Like the Big Ten West, that championship game set the precedent that the Big Ten West loses the championship game every year now. And the rumors were that, who was that, Barry Alvarez? Barry Alvarez was like, look, we're just going to take a dive on this one. Ohio State's their best chance. Let them throttle us 59-0. And then they went through some head coaches after that. And there were some rumors that that's why that the head coach didn't like that. And it's never been public, whatever. So, I don't know. I found some interesting data that if you search, what's the guy's name? He reffed the Michigan game last week. John O'Neill. Penn State fans probably know that name. Look that up. You can go down a rabbit hole. It goes back to the Purdue days with Drew Brees. There were complaints against him. Almost every team, because I'm telling you, they don't favorite the big schools like you would think. But Matt, you're right. They go by who's the favorite, who's the most talented. So normally it favors the Penn States, the Michigans, the Ohio States. Over time, based on the Buckeyes' past run, it seems like they've been favored the past 15 years or so. So, I don't know. Is the Big Ten screwing themselves by pushing in Ohio State in 2016 where they get destroyed? Michigan State in the year before, they get destroyed. It worked out in 2014 with the bad calls in the Penn State game. Ohio State wins the national championship. I don't know, but it's out there. I think Ohio State wins because they're at home. I think the Big Ten championship will be a game, but we'll decide on that later. But I think Michigan makes the Fiesta Bowl or whatever. Ohio State goes to the Rose Bowl. Penn State's in the Outback Bowl, and Northwestern follows whatever after their Big Ten championship loss. UCF left out. They're on the outside looking in, and the committee gives the thing that says Notre Dame got the bid from the group of 5. I'm banking it. When Notre Dame goes undefeated, they're going to say that they're not a conference championship. They got the independent group of 5 bid. So write that down, Matt. And UCF's going to be like, what the hell? And they're going to say...
Keep winning. They'll be the 2018, 2019 national champions. You can nail it to your stadium, and it'll just be a gigantic WTF for everyone to recognize.
They just better hope that someone other than Alabama doesn't win, and that their coach doesn't try to schedule a game.
Well, that's what I said. Their window is right now. They have to keep recruiting at an elite level.
I don't even know. UCF, I guarantee that's what's going to happen. And the funny thing would be is if Pitt beats Clemson, UCF really killed Pitt. Do they take Clemson's bid? But
at that point, I don't. It doesn't hurt putting them in.
I'd be heartbroken because my man Mike Leach would be left out.
He would be left out, but you know what? He's also lost to USC, who is awful. So that's your punishment.
Yeah, but that was another one of those ref calls where they didn't call the late hit on their quarterback.
Don't be in that situation to begin with. Don't be in that situation. Don't let a dead ass team lay around. That's what happens when you do that. You know what UCF didn't do? Let teams lay around. They score like 700 points a game. You know why? Because winners win. Ask Mike Singletary. He'll tell you. He'll drop his pants and say winners win.
Yeah, it worked out so well for him. Although if you go back to the 49ers message boards, that was the highly successful years, the building blocks that Jim Harbaugh just coasted on. the Mike Singletary teams.
Well, it's easy to build a house when it's already built, Rich. Come on.
All right, you got anything for the final bell? I don't have anything.
Yeah, my final bell. I just want to follow up. Back in April, I brought up about East Tennessee State coach Randy Sanders because he was the OC under Jimbo Fisher and was the quarterbacks coach. And he received a letter of reprimand and lost he lost a week's pay for slapping a kid in the helmet. And it looked like it was going to be a rough start for him taking a head coaching job. And actually, he was named a finalist for the Eddie Robinson Award. He won the SoCon championship and has a FCS playoff berth in his first season with the Bucs. So, turned it around, and it's Eastern Tennessee State's 8 wins is the third most in program history. So, snaps to him for fixing himself and not slapping kids and getting them in the right direction.
Very cool. So that concludes our show. Hate week's going on. Make sure you cheer against your rival. Thanksgiving's up.
And don't wear jorts to Thanksgiving dinner.
Don't wear jorts ever. If you even own a pair of jorts.
You're probably a Gator fan, and you probably need someone to make fun of you.
Which, that does remind me. We did have the surprise, and I forgot to put it at the top of the show, but we have a store now on Amazon, and we do have a Thanksgiving shirt out there. So if you like the show, I think it's football plus family equals Thanksgiving. So search that out. We're going to be sharing that stuff. We have some more designs that are coming up. That's what we were waiting on the approvals for. So very exciting news. We're going to end the show with that. So check us out. Make sure you subscribe. Tell your friends. And if you have any ideas or stuff for the show or things you'd like to see, please let us know. And we will see you next week. Thanks for listening.